in organizing debt, one of the steps that someone can take in organizing their debt is to consolidate or eliminate debt through a debt reduction and to transfer debt. So today, as we jump to the board, we're going to be talking about debt consolidation and debt transfer. So we've covered a lot in previous episodes about different kinds of debt, whether it be credit cards, cars, consumer debt, how the payments work, how payments are calculated, etc. So today what we're going to talk about is a little bit about the last step when it comes to organizing debt, which is the step of moving high interest debt to low interest debt, which we've covered already, but moving high interest debt to low interest debt that also takes our higher payments and makes them lower payments, but then the interest that we pay that is now going to hopefully be lower will now be tax deductible. Will now be a tax deduction on the interest that we pay according to current laws anyway. So some of you may already know what I'm talking about, but again, these are things that some people are very aware of, some people are just learning. So there's different places we can have debt. So there's just let's do the most common one. So we have credit cards, we have cars, we have student loans, we've got any consumer debt, which may be like a furniture store or an electronics store, or more commonly what we're seeing a lot now is Amazon accounts and Target online and Walmart and things like that, any kind of consumer debt. We have personal loans that can come from the bank. There are payday loans. There could be medical or dental payments that we're making. I apologize for my voice. I hope that it actually lasts today. I have several appointments and seminars, but we'll see how we do. Let's see, credit cards, cars, student loans, consumer debt, personal loans, payday loans, medical loans. There's a bunch, right? Going to draw a line here. With the exception of some tax deductions that we can get when we're a student. We're just going to talk about the actual loans themselves, not being a student and the tax deductions we get there. And so this column is non-tax deductible. Wow, now I'm kind of second guessing myself. Well, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure interest on student loans is not tax deductible. I guess I've never had a student loan. I'll have to find that out. I'll let you know. Pretty sure that it's not. But you never know. You know, sometimes you doubt. You gotta verify. Nobody's smart with everything. Okay, so, and maybe if somebody knows for sure, send me a text. And maybe we can verify that. Somebody Google it. Okay? Then you have tax deductible interest. Okay, tax deductible interest is going to be on a home, on a mortgage. It could be, and that could be a first mortgage or a home equity line of credit where you get tax deductions on the actual interest itself. So what's also interesting is on episode 17, we talked about this, is how the different payments are calculated. And so you have credit cards that the payment on a credit card is calculated based off of a percentage of the balance. Percentage of the balance. A car is figured out as they take the original balance and the payment is amortized over 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 3 years. There's multiple different lengths of car loans that you can get. But it's usually, in most cases, a fixed rate that's based on the original balance and then a set amount of time until it's paid off. Okay, student loans we're going to have to cover in another episode, just because there are multiple government programs that have made student loans different based on how they're paid, when they're paid, potential forgiveness plans, and we'll talk about that another time. Most consumer debt, if it's purchased with a credit card, it's obviously going to be figured out the same way as a credit card. But if I were to buy a piece of furniture and it's just a normal loan, then it's gonna, they're gonna loan me the exact amount that it takes, and I'm gonna have a specific payment every month until it's paid off. So personal loans through a bank most of the time are calculated off of a percentage of the balance. A payday loan, please, if at all possible, stay away from these because they are just nuts. I met with somebody yesterday that the interest, and this is not an exaggeration, is 400% per month. 400% per month. So think about that. Basically, the payment that they're making is interest only, and makes it so they just don't have to pay off the balance. But what they're paying, they would have paid off the balance in like 4 payments. It's just crazy. Medical and dental. What's interesting about medical and dental is it's some of the most flexible debt I've ever seen. As far as long as you're paying something, a lot of the time they're happy. You pay something, they're happy. You pay nothing, they're not. Amount, a lot of the time, is potentially negotiable, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how to get some of our debt into a tax-deductible position. So sometimes we have to look at the entire situation to really make a lot of this make sense when it comes to debt. And what do you consolidate? Do you not consolidate? Do you refinance your home? Take some of the equity to pay off debt? Do you not? And there is no black and white answer to that. There is no best way. It's just weigh the options and see which one makes the most sense for the person in their situation. So how a home mortgage works is if you've ever seen the document. So let's say someone were to buy a $300,000 home, and here's the zero line here. Here's zero. The $300,000, in the beginning, we're paying a lot of interest and a little bit of principal. But as time goes by, we end up paying more and more principal with every payment. The payment stays the same, where they calculate the payment on the fixed dollar amount at the beginning, and then as that balance goes down, more and more of our money that we're putting in goes to the principal of the loan, right? So there's 2 things that create equity in a home. One is going to be the balance going down. So let's say that the value of the home never changed, then the value of the home would be $300,000. As we make that payment, and some of it goes to principal, after, say, a year sometimes, this balance only goes down. Even if we're making a $1,500 a month payment, sometimes that balance only goes down about $3,000 or $5,000 or $6,000, even though we just dumped 20 grand into it, it only goes down by a few $1,000s again because of the way that it's amortized. The majority of the payment goes to interest in the beginning, and the halfway point, most people would think, in a 30-year loan would be year 15, but halfway point is actually closer to year 20. Year 20 is when we get halfway, as far as half going to principal and half going to interest, and then the rest of it we pay off in a very quick fashion because of how much more of our payment is going to principal. And again, they say, well, how is that? Why does that work? Well, if you think about it, if the interest rate is 5%, what is more? 5% on excuse me, 5% on 300,000, or as we pay the balance down, let's say the balance is 100,000. 5% of 300,000 is more than 5% on 100,000, right? And if I have a fixed monthly payment, obviously more of it's going to go to interest because it's 5% interest on $300,000 per year, and so that can be a lot. So that's one thing that builds equity, is paying down the balance, right? The other thing that's going to build equity is going to be the value of the home going up. So we'll focus on mortgages and different things that you can do on mortgages at a later date, on a later episode. But what we're talking about today is just repositioning debt using equity in a home. Okay, so here's your home. You buy it for $300,000. So the ceiling used to be here, and the roof used to be like that, right? So you buy it for $300,000. Some years go by, you pay down the balance, let's say to $250,000, but then the value, so value goes up, balance goes down, balance goes down, and so that gap that's being created there is equity, right? So in this situation, if the home value goes up to $400,000 and the balance goes down to $250,000, the equity is the difference between those two numbers. So this space here is my equity, right? So in this example, I have $150,000 of equity. So a lot of loans, they don't let you tap into all of the equity, but they will allow you to, maybe go up to 80% or 85% or 90%. In today's world, not very often do they let you tap into 100% of your home's equity. Okay, back in the mid-2000s, early 2000s, when I was more heavily involved in the mortgage industry, they did. There were even loans you go up to 105%. Okay, but we're not talking about the past. We're talking about the future, or the current, actually, which is 2018. Which obviously this could change over time. But that's what equity is. And so if I have, let's say, a credit card here and a car loan and some student loans and consumer debt, and I've got other debts, I can, I'm not saying you should, but you can take equity from a home and pay these off. Okay, so what would that actually do? Well, it would do a couple things. One is if my credit card payments are, say, $400, car payments $300, student loan payments are $200, consumer debt is another $300, then I'm looking at $1,200 of payments that are going to these things. Okay, $1,200 going to that, and let's say I'm paying $1,500 to my house that I originally got for $300,000. So my total payments are $2,700. Okay, if I was to take this $150,000 and I was able to pay off some of these things, let's say all of that debt adds up to $70,000 or $80,000. How mortgage payments are calculated is different than how these are calculated, and it's a longer term loan. And so the total debt on $800,000 or excuse me, on $80,000, if this all added to $80,000, would be more somewhere in the range of probably $500 to $600. And so again, it's not necessarily the always recommended thing, but depending on the person's situation, if they're looking at $2,700 of total debt payments per month, where now that could be lowered to $2,000, well, that frees up $700. And then you have to say, well, if that frees up $700 a month, if they took some of that and applied it back to the mortgage, how fast could they pay it off? Or if they were to save some of that money and earn interest instead of paying interest. But then one of the other things it does, not only does it lower the payment, it also moves any interest they were paying here that may be higher, that's non-tax deductible, into now a tax deductible interest situation. Now, if you have an accountant brain, your accountant brain might be going crazy, like, you know, I should make a spreadsheet and figure out, you know, what is the exact tax deduction, what's the interest rate, how much would they be, how much longer they would be in debt, you know, because it's now a 30-year configuration on the mortgage, and using equity to pay off debt, and what is the exact math. And you can find out the exact math, but a lot of the time, that exact math works if they plan on living in the house for the next 30 years. Well, I don't know about you, but the home I'm in now, I've been there 5 years. Do I plan on living there the rest of my life? No. And so my perfect plan of this is what it would look like over 30 years, well, is that what I'm going to do for the next 30 years? You know, and so sometimes, again, and I say this often as we're in class together, the Impact School of Money, is that it's not always what the math says. It's not always what the emotions say. It's finding that grounded middle and what is the actual practical application of what we're talking about, not just the math side. Because math says one thing, emotions say something else, but what is actually going to work for the person's situation? And really, what would be cool, and this may be cool to go back and watch this when this is actually happening, is as more and more people subscribe to the Impact School of Money, this becomes a national thing where potentially hundreds of thousands of people are subscribing to it, that people will write in and mail in questions and email and contact us through social media, where we can then give recommendations and just teach more about concepts that people are asking about their specific situation. So everybody's situation is different, and obviously the purpose of the Impact School of Money is not to give recommendations. Even though I am a licensed financial professional, it's not meant to give any recommendations. It's to just talk about how stuff works, how to make it work better potentially for you or someone that you know, and just to teach how to apply different things. And so, again, to sum up, is in organizing debt, one of the steps that someone can take in organizing their debt is to consolidate, which means taking two debts or several debts and putting them together, or eliminate debt through a debt reduction plan that I don't remember what episode it was that we previously talked about, and to transfer debt. And so whether that's the use of fully refinancing a home and actually getting a whole new loan, or going and getting a home equity line of credit, which is almost just letting somebody tap into their equity as if it's a line of credit, and as they pay off different things, it lowers the available amount, and then as they pay that back with that tax deductible interest payment, it increases what is accessible there. So thank you for joining us on episode 18 of the Impact School of Money, where our mission is to change the way that people are educated about money.